We are now entering the danger room. The topic of discussion, comic book deaths. So what comic book deaths have you guys researched into?
Well, I think there's a lot of obvious comic book deaths out there. I mean, Uncle Ben from Spider-Man, for one.
Classic, always a classic.
What do you think, Rick?
Oh, let's see. I mean, I know Nick is going to be talking a bit about Jason Todd, and we mentioned the Waynes. Those are your obvious ones. But then there's people like Captain Marvel and, oh, I don't know, Spider-Man.
Spider-Man with a T.
Spider-Man.
I think we all stopped and went, your pronunciation was absolutely.
So what about? So what
I
about?
like it. You keep it interesting.
So what about Captain Marvel or Spider-Man? Because I believe you're talking about Marvel as in Marvel's version of him.
The story goes, he was a cosmic superhero, which I associate with Buzz Lightyear, but that's besides the point. And
I would really like to associate with Spider-Man as being close to Woody, but I like that. Keep going. He's just gonna like reach over into my screen and just like punch me right in the face at one point.
Make for a good panel.
All right, so.
So what
Marvel.
do we think of Marvel?
Him and Rick Jones are associate personalities, I guess is the way of putting it. And when he dies, Captain Marvel, his son comes back.
But wait, what does he die of? Because this is interesting, because he's an alien.
Cosmic being, I prefer, first off.
Being.
He dies of cancer.
Unheard of in, really. We don't even know if it affects.
No death ray, like no nothing, just a very human like form of unfortunate death. Like he dies of cancer. I just think that's really interesting. A cosmic being, politically correct on this show all the time. A cosmic being dying of cancer.
Other odd deaths include, like Rick said, Jason Todd. Jason Todd was interesting because the way he died, well, the Joker beat him with a crowbar and then tied him up with his mom or wife.
But let's get to the lead up of how Jason died.
Okay, all right. The lead up of how Jason died.
Yucky.
People, they held a vote by telephone. Either the Joker or Jason Todd would die, and they picked Robin by a slim margin. It was about 50 votes difference, but
Conspiracy theory.
So they killed him off, beat him with a crowbar, blew him up in a warehouse, and supposedly dead, right? Wrong.
By the way, I just have to point out, like, for all the times that these characters come back in whatever incarnation, you cannot kill somebody deader than you have killed them in so many ways in these comic books. Beaten with a crowbar, tied up to the point where if you were just left there, you'd probably die. And then just, for safe measure, let's just blow up the building. Screw it, guys. We have these resources. Let's use them. And then he comes back.
So yeah, and then he comes back. Apparently something dealing with one of Superman's alternate forms banging on the walls of reality or something.
It just gets weird.
Shook him awake, and then Talia al Ghul finds him and then takes him to Ra's al Ghul, and that's where it kind of gets fuzzy for me. You guys know about Ra's al Ghul with Red Hood?
I mean, he becomes the Red Hood.
Right.
Red Hood,
which is interesting because the Red Hood was originally the Joker's first persona. So it's kind of like he's taking up the mantle of the older version of the Joker.
And now he's running with the Outlaws, which consist of Starfire and Green Arrow's protege. Can't think of his name.
But he kills people. He's not a nice person. He's gone.
But in the presence of Bruce Wayne,
they don't always come back the way they want to.
No.
In the presence of Bruce Wayne, he refuses to kill people, so he's still an obedient dog to his master. It's one way of looking at it.
So what about other comic book deaths that are influential or even not influential?
Well, you know what? We were talking about this right before we came back from the break. Kevin Smith, the famous comic book writer and director, he says that, probably one of the best aspects and most important aspects into making a superhero is dead parents. So I think I agree with that incredibly. I think you're like, wow, I'm really anxious and I just am angry at the world. What do? I should probably save lives.
Was Captain America an orphan?
Captain America...
Do we know?
We don't necessarily. It's not as detailed as the other figures. Captain America went in for it for love of country, and then there was, in the case of Spider-Man, Uncle Ben. Spider-Man didn't really have his parents. They left him at a certain age. They abandoned him.
So
for
first off,
good reason.
we already got the parents not being there.
Already the parents are just like stay with your aunt and uncle. We'll be back tomorrow.
And then to add insult to injury, Uncle Ben gets shot.
Spoiler. By somebody. Spoiler alert, Uncle Ben gets shot. For all of you out there who've been living under a rock, Uncle Ben dies. And in that case, Uncle Ben you see him in maybe hallucinations, and sometimes you see him in flashbacks as giving Peter Parker his little conscious and moral encouragement. And then, we never see him again. He's never brought back to life. And that goes for the Waynes too. And it's amazing how much dead parents will actually form a superhero. But we're going to move on to our next segment when we come back from the break. Stay here on Between the Panels.